Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Health Movement Podcast. We have a very special guest with us today, but before we introduce her, my name is Derek. I'm a two-sport collegiate athlete, teacher of over 20 years, and a certified personal trainer.
I'm Tim. I'm an athletic trainer, national registered EMT, and a wellness coach.
And as always, we're not doctors, so before you begin any new programming or nutritional changes or anything like that, please consult your doctor. But without any further ado, I want to introduce our guest, Jess Wilson from Perth, Australia, which we're outside of Boston, so this is definitely across the globe for us. She's a functional nutritionist, a motivational speaker, a health coach, but most importantly, she is a lover of life. Thank you for joining us, Jess.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm so excited.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Right now, it's 8 o'clock for us at night. It's 8 in the morning for you. So this is, I'm glad we could find a time that worked for everybody here.
Well, I'm an early riser. I'm a big believer in the morning ritual. So I've been up since 5. So it's kind of middle of the morning.
Oh, perfect. Do you have a fitness thing you do in the morning? Is it coffee
It's
and?
something that I teach as well, like, the discipline of a good morning ritual, not just your fitness and your exercise, but even down to things like your hydration, like your intention setting or your goal setting for the day. And we got to kind of do it as we're moving sometimes, like I might be out on a walk and I might be doing it in my mind, but I do have a pretty set morning ritual.
Oh, that's good. And I know Tim, I agree with it too, but he preaches hydration a lot. So it's good.
And routine. I think routine
Yeah.
is a big piece of that
Absolutely.
too.
Do
Consistency.
I really like the word ritual over routine because
Yeah.
I feel like a ritual is something that you look forward to it. It has a real positive association with that word. A ritual feels really kind of deep and nourishing. And, it's kind of like using the word movement instead of exercise. Somehow the brain receives that differently. But yeah, the morning ritual, even down to the way I brew my coffee. And I just think that when you have that, it's such a solid foundation for the way that you start your day.
Oh, I like that. We're gonna have to remember that one.
Do you get
Ritual.
thrown off if any of those rituals get interrupted, or you have to adapt to them at all?
Well, I mean, I like to think I'm pretty adaptable and flexible, but I'm also a human being and I love my coffee. So if I didn't get my, I'm not sure how the day would go. It's not my best nutrition advice, but
It's a little thing. I think
advice.
yes. Yeah. Happiness is important. That we all
Yeah.
need our little vices, and I think coffee's an okay one there.
Yeah.
You had done some articles on LinkedIn that I saw. One of them that really I was impressed with, and I think is super important, is you wrote something on the dark side of weight loss. And I didn't know if you wanted to give just a quick summary of what that covered, and then maybe we can jump into some more of the details on that.
Yeah, for sure. I probably asking to pick my brains a bit. That article was a couple of months ago, but I think
No, that's okay.
one of the things that I'm really trying to highlight and the work that we do really as functional practitioners is just highlighting the danger of the quick fix. And it's something that we don't want to hear. We don't want to hear that it's hard work and it's discipline and it takes time and I was touching in that article, not just on the effects of things like Ozempic and the new weight loss drugs, but just rapid weight loss in general, any of those extreme methods. So I was talking in the article about, whether it was the GLPs or the Ozempics or the weight loss drugs, whether it's extreme calorie restriction, a lot of people going on these long kind of like juice cleanses and all of that. And in addition to the biological side effects, which we can talk about in a minute, I think one of the biggest pieces that gets missed in all of that is addressing the root cause of why we gained the weight in the first place. It's those habits and behaviors and trigger points, emotional eating, comfort eating. We're not addressing any of that. And if we're not addressing any of that, then we're really just feeding that poor relationship with food by using these alternative therapies. And I'm not saying that they don't have a place. They absolutely have a place. But I think without doing the therapeutic work underneath and creating safety and stability in the body on a physical level, So making sure we don't gain the weight again, because we've actually done it in a safe and secure way. But it's also creating safety and security for the nervous system so that we don't then rubber band right back into those unhealthy habits, because that itself, what I'm seeing a lot now, people that lose a significant amount of weight by using these extreme methods and then rapidly gain that weight again afterwards because they haven't done that foundational work. From a mental health perspective, that is really dangerous. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that people I've talked to, you want to lose 50 pounds in a month. They don't want to take the time. And then if you look at like our longevity and you look over years and years and years, like in 30 years from now, does it matter if the weight came off in 2 months or if it came off in 2 years? There's going to be a huge difference if you take your time and do it the right way, because you're going to be able to maintain that weight loss that you had because you did it the right way and you developed healthy habits and you had a lifestyle change, which is where you need to get to, as opposed to just, like you said, the Ozempic or some of the drugs where it's a quick weight loss, but you never learned how to get down there.
Absolutely. And I think this is really highlighting a society issue, though, where we're, when I'm coaching our relationship with food, it's a similar sort of thing. It's this overinflated view that we have of wanting everything now, right? I think that
Yeah.
we've lost a bit of reality. I think that we live in a world where we just want these quick fixes and we want it now, and we're impatient and we're always moving to the next thing and the next thing, and nothing's ever good enough. And we're not those foundational grassroots health habits. Tim, you'll know this, you'll resonate with this. But those foundational grassroots health habits that do build over time and they do sustain us long term, we're just constantly looking for workarounds to that. And the reason for that is because we are all over busy, over scheduled, over stressed. And so the concept of a big, long wellness plan or a long fitness journey or a long weight loss journey is simply too overwhelming for the brain, because we don't have the bandwidth and the capacity to even think that far ahead. Does that make sense? So it's just immediate. What is going to help me right now in this moment? Because then I've got to move to the next thing and the next thing. And I think that this is more of a society and a lifestyle problem even than it is an individual issue.
Yeah, and I think the big piece, a big piece of that is the social media aspect to that, right? Everybody is so connected, and there's that instant gratification that comes with social media that they don't realize the work that people put in to get to these places that they are. Or the other piece to that is the misinformation, or the other piece where what people are portraying isn't actually what they're actually doing, right? And those are all things, those are all aspects to this too. But what I wanted to ask you, and this is where I think it's great for us, especially being in the United States, like having the different, the intercontinental aspect to this. We have a big problem here in the States with processed foods and, the unnatural ingredients, where our regulation is so different than, I know that I know it's much different than that of Europe, but these are things that I'd like to get maybe a little bit of your insight on what some of the factors. I mean, we know because if one of our first episode, we go over the obesity rates in America, and it's not just obesity, it's the health risks that come with obesity, right? And that speaks to the things that you're talking about with the lifestyle changes, and not just, I love that you said the movement, not the exercise, right? Like it is just, you just need to move yourself. And I think people get they put that into a box of, I need to go to the gym and I need to do these things. And it is what you make it.
The brain will avoid pain, right? Remember that one of the biggest motivators for the psyche is to avoid pain at all costs. So when it feels like it's going to be big and heavy and sweaty and difficult, we're already like resistance points. And you're so right, Tim. And I think what you were saying, or what you were asking there around this processed foods and the obesity epidemic, one of my favorite things to raise controversially, hope you don't mind getting a bit controversial in this podcast, Are we overfed or are we overtoxed? Because I think that we are seeing a new type of weight gain that is coming from toxins in processed foods. Now, obviously, nutritional arguments, calories are calories are calories. But I see this all the time where people are like, well, I'm not even really eating that much. But what they're eating is so full of toxins that the body has no other alternative but to store that in excess fat cells in order to protect itself. So I think that the processed food epidemic is huge. And I know in America, obviously, you guys probably have it worse, than the rest of us in terms of regulation. And I think one of the difficult things, and can we just touch on this for a minute, for some compassion for people and for people to have self-compassion for themselves as they're listening to this and learning. We've been sold something as safe, right?
That's a great point right there.
Can we
Yes,
just
we have.
touch on that for a minute, that it is not all our fault and our choices. And yes, it's our responsibility. I would love to touch on that later in this podcast as a motivational piece. Like, it's always our responsibility to do something about it when we know. But we've been sold that these things are food. We've been sold that it's safe. And the rapid rates of obesity and type 2 diabetes and all of these neurological conditions in children, the autism, the ADHD, this is stuff that we're seeing. A lot of people are not making that connection back to their food because they trust the food that they buy. If it's there and it's available on a supermarket shelf and it's advertised on the TV and, maybe it's in a brown box, so therefore it must be healthy, we trust that. We don't question it. And I think that the toxic load of the food that's being eaten is one of the things that is significantly contributing to the rapid weight gain. In addition to overconsumption of calories, I think it's also that's adding to it. And so people are at the end, and I'll finish on this, but people are at the end of the road where they're like, I don't know what else to do, but just take this weight loss drug because it's like a snowball effect. I'm just gaining and gaining and gaining weight. And I don't know. I don't have the education. So it's a very appealing tool to stop that runaway train. But again, with those weight loss drugs, we have not been given any education on the side effects and the long-term effects. Even if you look at things like Ozempic and the gastroparesis, what's happening in terms of how the gut freezes and the stomach stops working. Like, when you say it out loud, that can't be good.
No,
I mean, when
it
you
can't
actually
be.
start saying it out loud, you're like, hang on, my gut has completely seized up and stopped working. Like, that's going to be a problem later on. But again, it's that education piece. We trust it. We think it's safe, right?
Yeah, and we cover this a lot where we talk about eat as much whole food as you can, but looking at like calories and things like that, if you're getting $2,000 2,000 calories in fast food, and compare that to 2,000 calories of whole food vegetables, chicken, rice, potatoes, whatever it happens to be, you're going to be full off the 2,000 calories of high quality food, and the other stuff, you're going to be hungry in a couple hours.
Yeah, and disease free, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that the body receives that is very different.
Well, you've kind of touched on it in this again. This kind of comes back to, I don't know what the healthcare system is where you are, but our healthcare system, they don't speak to those things. If you go to the doctor and they don't speak to lifestyle change, they don't speak to, well, what are you doing what does your diet look like? Have you talked to a nutritionist? The first thing that they're going to do is give you a prescription or try to give you that magic pill that you said that people are looking for, right? And that's what that's the whole thing, is our system is kind of fed into that, where it's not just the healthcare system, it's the food industry, and all of it all kind of works against the consumer. And it really is up to, and it goes to the motivational piece, but it's not just motivation, it's education too. And I think that's a big piece to that too. And that's a real problem that we see with, especially what I see in the day to day, is people just don't know. And it's, it's not that they're not looking for it, they just don't know,
And it's tough too where, sorry, go ahead, Jess.
I was just saying they're confused because, like you said, there's so much information now out there on social media. People are confused about what to eat. They're confused about what's safe and what's not safe. And ultimately, where we've lost the connection as human beings is lost our connection back to self, right? And I said this in a talk that I did, I think it was yesterday. Your innate wisdom knows more than any doctor, any Google, any search engine, any nutritionist about your body. And your innate wisdom, your body's computer system is going to communicate that to you via symptoms: pain, bloating, discomfort, brain fog, lack of energy, weight gain, cardiovascular diseases, all these things. And it's going to be screaming at you, and it's going to be communicating this to you long before the problem actually develops, right? But we've lost the ability to tune into that and to work with that and to actually trust ourselves and our own judgment and what we need versus outsourcing it. Because when we outsource, like you said, Tim, unfortunately, the conventional model of big pharma, big medical, big food, big government is not geared for wellness. And it's particularly not geared for long-term wellness. So we have to start asking the critical questions of ourselves and start saying, well, this is not working for me. Like I'm not feeling good on this food that I'm eating, and go on our own individual journeys. And I think that's very scary for people because we've lost that connection and that trust back to the fact that we actually know what's best for us.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. And I was thinking about this today too, where the way people treat their bodies and what goes into it, and just, the effort to see, all right, if I'm eating this, this is my reaction to it, how I do that. But I was thinking it's similar to somebody building a business from scratch. It's not going to be done in 6 months. Like, it's going to take a long time, but you're going to be looking at, what you're spending your money on, what's, the part that's doing best for you. What do you have to cut out because that didn't work for 2 months, but I'm going to try it first and see what happens. I'm going to write stuff down. I'm going to take notes. But people don't really do that. And it can sound like a pain to track what you're eating, but in reality, it takes 2 minutes. You open up an app, you write down.
To perception piece and this overscheduled, overbusy, overstressed thing, right? Because we have, and I want to come back and just touch on some small wins in a minute, because I think, we definitely have this picture that it is a long-term journey and it takes a long time to get there, to build these habits, and it does. But that is not without some really immediate small wins that people can get. And I think that we don't want to paint too much of a gloomy picture around it, right?
Yeah, yes.
But I think, so, we'll come back to that. I think coming back to in terms of why people don't do that, if you have a conversation with someone about having scrambled eggs in the morning instead of a high sugar breakfast cereal, they go, oh, I don't have time to make it. I don't have time to make scrambled eggs. I don't have time in the morning. I don't have time. The two biggest enemies to any healthcare regime are time and fatigue. If you ask anyone right now listening to this podcast, what are the barriers to you actually showing up and doing it different? They're going to come out with, I don't have time and I'm tired, right? So when we workshop that, though, coming back to the scrambled eggs piece, and I get kind of like attacked on Instagram a lot when I talk about eggs in the morning instead of, Weetabix or something like that. I've timed this in my teenage boys because arguing with me, it is 2 minutes. It's 2 minutes, right? If you have a look at your phone right now and you have a look at your average daily screen time, I don't know about you guys, but mine is, I don't even know if I want to say it.
We talked about this a few episodes ago. Yeah, we're not, it's bad.
I'm over 7 hours, I'll tell you that much. 2 minutes versus 7 hours on your phone. It's the perception. And why is the brain perceiving this as so difficult and such a big thing to do? And it's simply because our bandwidth is low. It's simply because we are just overwhelmed already. So it's almost like we've got to pull back, take some space, and reassess the situation. And just quickly coming back to those small wins, I say in all of my talks, the beautiful thing about food is that it is instant, right? The results are not always instant, but the way you feel is pretty instant. If you go and eat a big, unhealthy, greasy takeaway meal, you know about it straight away. You feel it straight away. We all do. But if you go and eat a nice, beautiful, healthy steak salad for lunch, like a good, like, I don't know, Nourish bowl, or, a good, like, healing curry or something like that, you feel like a rock star immediately. You go, oh my God, I feel so good. I've got energy. Think about a time that you've gone and had, a beautiful, healthy brunch on the weekend. How do you feel all day? You get so much done on a Saturday when you do that, right? So it's even just making those tiny little connection pieces back and taking the really, really small wins. And even if you didn't lose weight that day, or you didn't get your 50 pounds in a month, or whatever you're chasing, it's also adding the non-scale wins and understanding that you feeling better is your body's way of communicating. Let's do that again tomorrow and the next day.
We had a woman on, Sam Coop, a few episodes ago, who trains mothers pre and postnatal, and she was saying she did a workout, a plan for 8 weeks, didn't lose a pound, but lost 2 inches on her waist because the food was better, the workouts were there. So it again, the scale lies to you sometimes. If you're doing the things you should be doing, you're right, you're gonna feel so much better, and in the end, that's the best barometer of success, I think, is how you feel, because your
Absolutely.
body
And
tells you if you're not good.
it's how you feel from a mental health perspective as well, right? It's, for
Yes.
me, when I tell our story, we have a very powerful story of my two boys when they were sick, when they were younger, and how they healed through all of this. Food became a source of control and empowerment for me. We were in the medical system, there was nothing in inverted commas that I could be doing for them. I was waiting for answers. I was waiting for results. It was outsourced. And when I started taking back control of our food and our health choices at home, not only does it really help in terms of how you feel, but it gives you back that sense of control over your life, right? It's that motivates, that like empowerment piece where you go, this is an autonomous choice that I get to make. What I put in my body is my decision. And that can feel very scary for people, but you can reframe it as a positive. It's actually so empowering, right? Your morning ritual is something that you get to dictate. You get to create that. That's up to you, you know?
I like what you had said too about, and I think you're going to touch on it later, you said, but responsibility and how it's each person's responsibility. We don't have the full understanding that we might need to, but that's also really good news, because if you gotten to a certain point because you didn't understand, then you can certainly learn and take the steps you need to and reverse the things that have happened. So it's you're right. It is very empowering, because at the end of the day, you're the one choosing what goes in. And I know some people have talked to us about eating on a budget and things like that, because sometimes the stuff with no additives is more expensive than the stuff that they put extra stuff, but it's definitely doable. You just, like anything else, you have to learn and understand it and continue with it and be consistent.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think coming back even to that responsibility piece, until you take responsibility for your life or your health, until you take responsibility for your life, someone else is running your life. So until you get in that driver's seat, until you get out of the back seat and into the front seat, you might not know where you're going and you might not know how to drive that particular vehicle, but until you are in that driver's seat, somebody else is driving, right? Someone else is making those decisions and steering your ship. And the thing about responsibility when it comes to health is it's very scary for people. And there's a real kind of resistance where we go, this is your responsibility. People immediately, you can almost sense the body energy where it's like, whoa, I've got enough on my plate. Like, I've got enough responsibility. Don't be telling me that it's not my fault, it's his fault, sort of thing. But there's a difference between responsibility and blame, right? One is very empowering and one is not. Responsibility is action forward. A responsibility is an acceptance of the situation and going, how can I do something to move out of this stuck state, right? It's very empowering because it gives you back control. Whereas blame, I think people confuse the two, right? Blame is a very critical, victimized, negative thinking mindset that keeps us stuck where we don't want to be, because we're constantly obsessing about what we did or what we don't want or how bad we did or how hard it is or how it's all our fault. It's not productive at all to be stuck in blame. But responsibility is different, right? Responsibility is going, well, I don't understand this or whatever it is, but I'm going to, as Jocko Willink says on his podcast, I'm going to move in any direction, right? I don't know whether dairy is good for me or not, but I'm just going to eat some vegetables today. Or I don't know what type of exercise I should be doing, so I'm just going to go for a walk. Or just start moving in any direction with your health, and you'll learn as you go.
Yeah. Small incremental change over time, right? And I think that's a big piece. Is you touched on it earlier, where it doesn't all have to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen overnight. And I think it's really just figuring out. I love that. Just move in any direction, right? Like that's a great outlook to have, and it's a mindset piece too. I think, and it's trying to alter your mindset a little bit of knowing why you're doing it, right? I think
your why has to underpin everything, because that's your motivational piece, right? If you don't know why you're doing it and you're not deeply invested in that, then you probably won't sustain it. I think the other thing also is that all or nothing piece. You don't have to be all in or all out. You don't have to be like doing the diet perfectly or doing the workout plan perfectly. Like there are many, many different shades of gray in there. And that's another mindset that needs to be cracked in terms of the old diet mentality of the 90s and how that set us all up to kind of think, well, if we're not doing it perfectly, then I may as well not be doing it at all.
Yeah.
And Tim had mentioned this earlier, and we were actually just talking about it not too long ago, but you have your floor, you have your ceiling. My ceiling of what I can do fitness-wise, maybe I'm at the gym, I walk to the gym, I stretch out, I do my mobility stuff, I get a good workout in, and it's 2 hours start to finish. Come home, have a good breakfast. That's my ceiling. My floor, I might have 5 minutes. So I bang out as many push-ups as I can and jumping jacks until I'm exhausted, and then that's it. But at that moment, maybe that's the best I can do, and I'm going to give it everything I have for those 5 minutes, because life does come up.
If you only have 40% to give and you give 40%, it's 100% day.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
I love the analogy of the ceiling and the floor, though. I talk about negotiables and non-negotiables. I think we have to have a line in the sand where we draw some non-negotiables with our health. So for you, it might be movement. But the degree to which you move every day may be different. And it's the same with your diet. You might just go, I'm just not eating that anymore, whatever it is. I don't know. You guys are American. I'm not eating Oreos anymore because that's my downfall. Every time I open a packet of Oreos, that's it. It could be one simple thing that is a non-negotiable. I do not do that anymore. And no matter what else happens around me, some days I'm going to be amazing and I'm going to hit my protein intake and I'm going to drink a green smoothie and I don't know, whatever. And other days, I'm going to eat on the run and it's not going to be great, but I'm just not going to eat any gluten or I'm just not going to eat any Oreos, And I think it's got to raise the floor, I think is what I'm hearing from you, because for many people, the floor is where they are at the moment, that kind of base level, and it's not working. So we've just got to keep raising it slightly so that, like you said, Derek, maybe on the days where you're not doing it 100% or you're not feeling it, at least you're still doing something.
Yeah. And like you said, move it just a little bit. It doesn't have to be a huge change. And if you normally eat 5 cookies and you cut it down to 4, that's a win right there, and then the next day you can go to 3 or the next week or whatever it is. But, baby steps, you eventually will get there.
Drink your water.
Yes, definitely a lot of water.
Yeah, the water is, and that's why Derek brought it up earlier. I'm big into and that's a big thing where I talk to a lot of people, and there's an alarming amount of people that don't even drink any water in a day, never mind what they should be drinking as a daily intake, so that's I would ask people like, how much water do you drink in a day? And they'd be like, well, I drink coffee. There's water in coffee, or sometimes I'll get, there's water in beer, and it's like, that's not how it works. And I think there's some jest in what they're saying, but at the same time, I also think that some people truly believe that sometimes, and it's like they just don't understand. And I think goes back to that education piece. But at the same time, I think there's a ignorance is bliss type of mentality to that sometimes too. So
We live in denial. I talk about this a lot. We don't want to give up our favorite things,
Yeah.
right? We live in a desire-based mindset. We live in denial of the things that we know are probably not good for us because we don't want to know.
but you can have some of those you can have those things, right? Like that's the whole piece is like, you don't have to fully give it all up. And it's funny because I was, so I don't know if you have Cub Scouts. We have Scouts here in America. So my son, he's a 7-year-old. We were at, I haven't even told you this, Derek. We were at Scouts last night and he's 7. They're a younger group. And the mom, the scout leader, the troop leader, she walked up to me as they were walking in and she was like, we're doing, healthy eating and brushing your teeth was their, their badge that they're earning this week. And she was like, we needed a professional. And she was like, I kind of already had you in mind, but if you would mind talking to them, she kind of threw me on the spot. Right. So I'm like, I'm trying to talk to the kids about, I'm just trying to lay a groundwork of like, what's a healthy food? What's not a healthy food? So I tried to have, all right, give me some healthy foods. And they started throwing out fruits and vegetables. And my little guy I was like, all right, well, what goes with fruits and vegetables? And Keegan just immediately was like, protein. He threw out protein, right? And, but at the same time, then we got about 4 or 5 foods in, and one of the kids inevitably brings up McDonald's, right? And he says McDonald's. And I'm like, all right, well, it's not healthy. There are healthy food options at McDonald's. Not that anybody eats them, but, and also trying to say, all right, well, those are things that you can have sometimes, maybe once in a while. But if you do them all the time, that is not healthy for you. And like just trying to get them at a base level to understand what's healthy and what's not healthy at that age. And I was really surprised, a group of 7-year-olds were throwing out for the most part pretty great stuff. So I think that was,
I mean, I think intrinsically we know, just sometimes we don't want to know. I was talking about the having things. Sometimes I was doing this talk the other day, and I raised the issue of 80-20, everything in moderation, the 80-20 rule. 80-20, if we were brave enough to get really honest with ourselves, the people that say they're doing 80-20, and I do this with all of my clients, they're not doing 80-20, they're doing 60-40, it's 50-50. Right? We think it's 80-20 because that's what we've convinced our minds, that I only have a little bit. But if you were to actually sit down and, analyze it from a nutritional perspective, it's probably more like 60-40. Yeah.
I remember.
We feel bad,
And talking about not understanding it, I remember back in college, I was looking at candy because, college kids don't always eat that great. And I'm like, oh, Swedish fish have no fat in them? That's great. Like, I'm not like, that's not bad. So I can have Swedish fish. And then eventually you learn what all that processed sugar does to you and what it just turns right into fat anyway. But I remember once I made that realization, I was like, I'm such a moron. Like, how did I not know this? But like you said, you need the education at some point in time. And I don't think it's there. I mean, we have health class in school, but I don't think it goes into the detail we need. And that's not a knock against a health teacher or anything like that. They do try, but I don't think it's emphasized the way it should be. Because if you're not mentally where you need to be, if you're not eating well, if you're not sleeping the way you need to, it's really hard to become as successful as you possibly can. You've got to get all your ducks in a row.
Yeah, we're not realizing our full human potential when we don't have the base layer of health.
Yeah. We say there are four things we look at: sleep, nutrition, your movement, and then your mindset. And you need all 4 of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, as Derek drinks some water here. So
I know, got to stay hydrated. I need that.
It was funny because I said that and Derek kind of touched on our health classes here in America. Like I didn't learn the basic. I mean, and we had the food pyramid, which is a straight lie anyway. So, but
all carbs,
at
everything
the
you
same,
need.
yeah. I mean, it was brutal if you look at that, and it really should be inverted if you look at it. But
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't learn about those things until I was in college taking my advanced level nutrition class. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that, those are things that and I was, my early 20s by the time I really understood what I should be doing on a
Mm.
day in and day out basis. And again, I was saying to my sister-in-law when we were at the scouts thing last night, where I don't remember ever drinking water before I was in college. My son brings a water bottle with him everywhere, but like for me, I
Well,
never, it
yeah.
wasn't part of our, it might have been because it was in the 90s and it was just a different time, but like it was, I don't think it was ever really discussed or talked about. And then that was my base level knowledge going into, the first 2 decades of my life.
Mm.
And that just, it's foundationally, and personally in my journey with food, I grew up, I was a chubby kid, I had a very difficult time pulling myself out of my relationship with food just because I think some of it is an addiction to the sugar for sure. Like there is a
Yeah.
very addictive chemistry quality to that really hooked me for sure. And I think now it's once you start eating correctly and you start putting the healthier foods first, you go back to those things and it almost immediately what you talk about is it feels like like you've been poisoned, and
Yeah.
it really
Yeah.
does, your whole body chemistry changes when you start to do these things correctly and more consistently.
Yeah. Absolutely. And your mood
Yeah.
Yeah.
very
And
quickly.
I think we were talking about like, oh, I have to give up this food or I have to sacrifice this. But if you weigh it against the benefits, and it might not be that immediate taste, but how you feel, your cognitive ability,
Yeah.
your stress level, everything improves. So yeah, you're giving up a little something, but the reward on the other end of that, it
Yeah.
outweighs it immensely,
Yeah. It's
immensely.
not a sacrifice if it heals you, right? And,
Yeah.
and this is where we really have to come back to that why and those goals, because when we're in, I call it, it's almost like there's a small version of us and a big version of us. And when we're in that kind of needs, wants-based mindset, we're like, oh, it's my favorite thing and I really love it and I don't want to give it up. And, all of that. That is small you talking, and you will stay small in that mindset, right? And I want to hold on to these things and whatever. But where big you is, that's the person that's chasing their goals, has identified their why, is really starting to visualize what their optimal human potential is. What can I achieve in my life, my career, my relationships, you know, any of these things? Do I want to go and, hike in Machu Picchu? I don't know. What are these things that you want to do in your life? But when you really start to think about it, that's where you come from a needs-based mindset. What do I need to eat to get me there? How do I need to move to get me there, right? It's kind of like you look at the most successful people in the world. I recently went to a breakfast with Richard Branson. You know Richard
Oh,
Branson,
wow.
Virgin,
Yeah.
yeah, right. So
Yeah.
classic example of him and many of them. Stephen Bartlett, like there's heaps of these guys. Tony Robbins, I don't know, all of them, right? Their health and their wellness rituals are their non-negotiables. These guys are not overweight, they're not unhealthy, they are prioritizing their physical health as an absolute non-negotiable, because that is the foundation of success, right? So it's even just taking that step back and going, like, yes, why do I have this attachment to these unhealthy things that are not serving me and they're keeping me small? They're keeping me stuck where I don't want to be. And yes, it's painful and scary and difficult to let them go because they're my vices or they're my comfort or, you know, um, but everything that I want is over here. And like you said, it's reframing it as a sacrifice. And I think also people have a real perception that healthy food is boring and it's tasteless and it takes time to prepare. It's just all nonsense. But where that's come from is the fact that we've glorified junk food. So we put junk food on a big pedestal. It's like the big shiny thing under the Christmas tree that you can't touch until Friday. We've really created this hype around the color and the sparkle and the taste and everything of junk food. When you eat it, because of all the chemicals in it, your brain lights up like a Christmas tree, right? It's the dopamine hit. It's all the
Oh,
rewards
yeah.
going off. But what that's done is inadvertently, by glorifying all of that, we've demonized healthy eating. And so healthy food is like, oh, it's like the detox I have to do twice a year, or oh, it's, I've got to eat my vegetables, or oh, we've got this real kind of like um, difficult mindset around it that we've created. I look at it from a place of abundance, right? You can eat meat, you can eat fat, you can eat salt, you can eat like do you know everything tastes good when you cook it in butter and salt? Do you know how amazing vegetables taste when you cook them that way? Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like, I think that we've got this real skewed perception over how incredible a healthy lifestyle can actually be, not only for the benefits that it brings us, but the food tastes great.
Yeah.
You
And I
just have
think
to
it's really
learn how to cook
important that
it.
we sell more of that benefit to people. Is kind of go, I don't ever feel like I'm lacking anything in my life. I had a huge, great big steak last night. It was amazing. I don't know what everybody's talking about.
That's great. That's great. And I did see you did have another article about 10 surprising health habits of highly motivated people,
Yeah.
which I think goes to what you were saying. Your health, you said treat your health as sacred in there, which is huge. I did love your last point on there was intentionally have fun. Like
Yeah.
I that is huge. Can you touch on that at all? The just
Yeah,
having
well, I mean,
fun.
I think for people that love the science behind things, the body produces something called oxytocin, which is our joy hormone, right? Oxytocin is another word for joy. And oxytocin is one of the only hormones that's produced directly in the hippocampus of the brain and floods immediately into the bloodstream. Whereas a lot of other hormones, even things like your cortisol, your stress hormones, your blood sugar hormones, your sex hormones, all of that, they need a signaler first. So it's a two-step process. Joy is a one-step process, right? You can immediately hack any state that you're in if you can find a pocket of joy, if you can find a moment of joy. And I think this concept of intentionally having fun, as human beings, we are wired to play. We need to play, we need to move, and there is no healthy existence without joy. If you're eating a diet and you're absolutely hating the food that you're eating, you've got the wrong practitioner helping you. You're
Yeah,
eating the wrong
exactly.
diet, right? You
And you're
should
not
be
going to stick
eating
with
it.
it either.
Yeah. And I think so. I think the fun piece is so important for people because we are just so serious about everything all the time. And when you can live in a healthy body and you can be having fun and you can have a bit of a sense of humor about things and you can have forgiveness and grace and compassion for yourself when you mess up and you eat some chocolate and I don't know, you can go and do some of the things that light your soul on fire, whatever that is. Maybe you go down to the beach on the weekend, maybe you catch up with a friend for coffee, maybe you watch a comedy show before you go to bed. I don't know, like there's so many different ways you can do it. That to me is living because you can lose the weight. You can get healthy. You can go and train 7 days a week in the gym and you can chase that career and you can land that promotion and you can, I don't know, you can do all the stuff. But if you don't have that sense of being that is internally happy and playful and joyful and free and excited about your life, then you still haven't won.
That's really well said. That's really well said.
Love that.
Yeah.
Everything that I live for, though, I say to people, I teach people how to live again. This is not just about eating better or getting your body disease free or losing the weight or getting fit. Like all of that is that's kind of the vehicle to joy. You just want to love your life. We're here for one time,
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is a lot easier to be happy in a body that you love, in a body that's healthy, in a body that's fit, functional. And the reason for that is energy.
Yep.
When you're running on rocket fuel every day and you bounce out of bed in the morning and you feel really good and, nothing feels as hard. Nothing feels as depressing or as dark or as difficult or as anxious because you're coming from that natural state of high vibrational energy and joy that's being driven through your health practices.
Yeah, I like it. I don't want to keep you too long, but I did have a couple questions. I told some of the women that I work with and some of the guys that we were talking to you, and my mom has a couple questions
Oh, let's
too.
go. What do you want to know?
All right. So, and I know I'm putting you on the spot with these, but one of the women I work with was wondering, like, just the cravings at the end of the day. Like, do you have any advice on the best
Yeah.
way to stop that?
Definitely. So the very first thing is to understand, what are you craving? Because if you're craving sugar, it's likely that your blood sugar's tanked, and then with what you're eating at the start of the day, right? So if you're craving sugar at the end of the day, that's usually a blood sugar issue, and that's usually a lack of protein in the first half of the day. So we'll talk about that. If you're craving salty crunch, that's an
Yeah.
adrenal issue. So we want to look at stress. We want to look at how much have you had your foot on the gas that day. So the first thing is to understand, what am I craving and what is my body trying to tell me? The second thing is always workshopping that first half of the day, because so many people don't realize or understand that the 3 p.m. crash is not normal. The tendency to snack at 5 p.m. is not normal. It all comes from what we're doing in the first half of the day. And when we're leading our day with carbohydrate and an absence of protein and fat, that sends us on the blood sugar roller coaster, right? And once you start putting that kindling on the fire with lots of high carbohydrate foods, that's just how you're going to run all day. You're going to need to keep fueling that. So my first piece of advice would be, workshop your morning and make sure that you are getting a good dose of proteins and fats and not so many carbs. The second thing is, figure out if it's a blood sugar or a stress issue, like what's going on there. And the third thing, in terms of a practical tip to stop the snacking, is literally switch the routine. If you've come home, you've dumped your bag on the bench and you're standing in the kitchen near the pantry, you're stuck in the habit, right? So you want to cultivate a different ritual or routine at that point, which might be to come home, put your bag on your bed, put your walking shoes on, and just go for a lap around the block, to flush out that cortisol for the day. Or it might be to come home, walk into the kitchen and make a cup of tea and go straight out to your garden and just stand in the afternoon sun and just have a cup of tea in the afternoon sun and let your nervous system come down. So I think a lot of the time for people, it's also just getting out of the exact place where they're standing and they're doing these habits and creating a new, you remove that ritual and you've got to create another one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, those are great. Honestly, those are great.
And then one was talking about motivation, and someone was looking at, like, how do you stay motivated? And you did
Oh, this
touch
is
on
my
this with,
favorite.
okay,
Oh,
I
this
won't
is
say
good.
anything.
Here we go,
Dive in.
everybody. Listen up. I'm going to teach you my myth of motivation. That I didn't get this from anywhere. I've invented this in my head. There is no scientific backing to this, but let me tell you, it's going to make sense to you right now, right? We have completely screwed up the idea of motivation, and that's why nobody's motivated. Because the motivation myth, all of us are waiting to be motivated before we do something, or we're waiting to be motivated in order to keep doing something. So we look for memes on the internet. We leave it until Monday. We procrastinate. We try to get all the other tasks out of the way first. We do all these things, right? Because we're like, well, I'm just not motivated to do it, right? I have a completely different take on motivation for you, right? Motivation comes from momentum. It never comes first. Nobody is motivated to get up at 5 a.m. in winter and go for a walk in the rain. I'm not motivated to I do it, but do I want to do it? Of course I don't want to do it. I'm a human being, right? So there's this analogy that I use, and I would love to share this on your podcast. Imagine that your car is broken down and you've got to push start the car, right? And it's really, really, really heavy when you start pushing the car, right? And you're pushing, and it's heavy and it's difficult, particularly if you're a woman and the car's not going anywhere. At that point, is your brain motivated to keep pushing that car? No, not at all. Because what it wants to do is it wants to opt out. It wants to call a friend. It wants to call we have the RAC here in Australia to come and rescue you from the side of the road. You don't believe at that point that you can do it. You don't want to do it because you're getting tired and you're pushing, you're not going anywhere. The minute the car starts to inch forward, you only need, that little rock that you get, the little,
Yep.
The minute that happens, there is something that lights up in your brain where you immediately think, I can do this. I can absolutely do this. Just keep pushing, just keep pushing. And the more you push and the more it rocks and the more, right? Once the car starts to roll forward, you are so motivated to push that car. You are not going to stop until you have gotten the engine firing again. You fully believe you can do it. You're backing yourself and you go. So motivation comes from momentum. It never comes first. And I think as a society, the sooner that we can understand that we have to do the first few really, really hard things without being motivated to do it, it's discipline. It's not motivation. Just do the thing. You're not motivated. You don't want to do it. Give yourself compassion for the fact that you don't want to do it. I don't want to do it either. But once you do it, and once you feel the benefit of doing it, and once you see that you can do it, you will have more motivation to continue than you know what to do. Does that make sense? But it
That
keeps
makes,
us,
yes.
this elusive idea of having to be motivated all the time keeps us not getting off the starting blocks. So that's
I
the
like
best
that. I like that analogy.
in terms of, it's just understand that motivation is not this like grand thing that we somehow manage to manifest out of nowhere. Like you got to do the hard work to get motivated to do more. But the second thing is, and I think just maybe even from a feminine perspective for her, particularly in terms of her question, I think the key to staying motivated is to finally love yourself enough. It's to love and respect and value yourself enough, because motivation does not cancel the hard work. You might be motivated on your health journey. It doesn't mean it's not hard. It's always going to be hard. But I think if you love yourself enough and if you respect yourself enough to treat your body like it's sacred, and you've really hit that point where enough is enough, I think that you get a lot more motivated to change.
I like that. I
I
like
love
that.
that.
And it comes back, you said at the beginning or in the middle, and we've talked about this a lot, how important your why is. And if the why is strong, then that first push on the car is a little easier.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You
And
know,
it helps you to be more disciplined too. And I love that you brought up the discipline point. And you brought up Jocko earlier, but Jocko is a big discipline guy too, right? And that's where I love he takes the picture of his watch at 4 a.m. every day, and that's the kind of stuff that
Yeah.
it's. Or even David Goggins talks about. He's a big runner, but he's like,
Yeah.
sometimes I look at my shoes from across the room and I just don't want to do it. He's like, I do it anyways. You know what I mean? And that's
Even Tony Robbins says, I've trained my brain when I say go, we go.
Yeah.
One of my favorite sayings about discipline was taught to me by a very, very dear friend of mine is discipline is devotion. Another word for discipline is devotion.
like that.
Yeah.
all right. I just my mom. I'm just gonna pick a couple of hers. She fired off a few
I'll
of
give you
them.
short answers now. Let's go.
Yeah. Organic food, is it more nutritious, or is it like a sales gimmicky thing?
The short answer is yes, it is a lot more nutritious and a lot less toxic for your body. For those people listening who get overwhelmed with the cost and the thought of organic, do the best you can. And, just do things like your berries, your leafy greens, and particularly your meats. Just buy the best quality meat that you can afford. Buy the cheaper cuts, your roasts and your briskets and that sort of thing. But if you can buy grass-fed meat, you'll go a long way to reducing your toxic load. But yes, it is better for you.
All right. And then 0% fat Greek yogurt, is it healthier than yogurt with fat in it, or is
No,
it just
definitely not. No, but I think, it comes down to your goals. And then people ask me yogurt question all the time. Somebody said to me the other day, what yogurt do you eat? I said, I don't eat yogurt. Why would I eat yogurt? I eat meat and fruit and vegetables, and there's no space for yogurt in my diet. I'm a woman. I only eat twice a day. I fast. There's no space for yogurt. If you like yogurt, you want to have it in your diet. I think if you're going to be consuming dairy, it's got to be full fat dairy.
full
Because
fat?
Otherwise I really don't see the benefit in it at all. Because fat is probably the best part of dairy. I think the rest of it is really just kind of, hormones, maybe arguably a bit of protein.
Yeah. So whole milk, whole yogurt, whole everything, if you're having it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to quality for people. I'm not anti-dairy at all, but I think if you're going to be consuming dairy, you want to make sure that you're accounting for it in your daily calories, because it's additional. It's not the basis of your diet. It's additional, right? And B, it's just quality, right? For you guys in America, your dairy, and particularly fat. If you take fat out of it, you've really taken any kind of nutritional component out of it. So full fat, but you've got to account for the calories if you're going to have full fat.
Do you guys laugh at Americans when you see what we eat and what we have here? You're like, what are they doing?
You know, we have better than you for sure in Australia, but
Yeah.
it's not great. Our supermarkets are absolutely filled with processed foods. But I think for you guys, there's definitely, you know, a perception that Americans eat a lot more, you know, portion wise, I think. But I think that's come from the processed food industry. Because like you were
Yeah.
saying, 2,000 calories of processed food, you're still going to be starving.
Yeah.
You're still going to eat.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely think that you guys have a big challenge on your hands, though.
Not impossible. I think that's the
No.
big thing. Is it's not impossible. So, and I like that you kind of reeled that in a little bit earlier when you were like, it's not, you know, the doom and gloom aspect of what we're talking about is, you know, it is a heavy subject, but at the same time, it's just educating yourself and you know, going back to the organic thing that you were talking about too. I always used to tell people go to farmers markets, go to you know, shop local. It doesn't have to be Whole Foods, and a lot of the times it's going to be cheaper at the farmers market than it is at Whole Foods, than it is at those bigger you know, chain kind of places too. So that's and you're going to get a lot more nutrients out of those things than you do out of what you get in the grocery store as well. So
And I think there's three big things that every single person can do, regardless of budget, regardless of time, regardless of anything, right? I think there are three things that every single person could do that would make a significant difference to their health. The first thing would be to drink water, right? Everybody has access to water. Everybody can start to get hydrated. We can all drink water. The second thing is protein, right? We can all eat protein. And you know, you'll be fuller for longer, you'll be stronger, you'll be more energized, you'll be all the things, right? You can drink water, you can eat protein, and you can walk.
yeah,
There was one type of movement that I would pick for everybody to just start doing is we can all walk, or most of us, you know, but you can, you know, so I think those three things, you can drink water, you can eat more protein, and you can walk. The rest of it may come. You may never eat organic, you know, they're great. That's fine. That's no problem. Like, I think it's about what are the tangible things that we actually can do every day that are not perceived as a mountain.
Awesome. Well, Jess, thank you so much for joining us. We've taken up a ton of your time and we appreciate you hanging out with us. So how can people get in touch with you?
Well, obviously I'm on the gram. So Instagram is Jess Wilson Nutrition, or my website, jesswilson.com. I work with people one-on-one for nutrition coaching, for health coaching, for life coaching, and all of that. I've got a number of programs. And like I said, you know, my biggest love is just getting people living again. It's, you know, it's all of this stuff done in a really, really achievable way. And it's just getting back in the driver's seat of our own bodies and our own lives. That's what I love to do.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you very much.